It was beautiful. Thank you, Peggy. When Henry introduced himself, he made reference that he was educated at Collegeville, the good Benedictines, right? And little did I know that several of us have something in common. I was also educated by the good Benedictines and once was one of them. But our next speaker, John Lyons, is a graduate of the same college. John is from Rock Island, Illinois, and his father Frank stood here, and his wife Rita is here, and his sister Kathy and Dave right here. John's the only Lyons I know of who has returned to the city from which Ellen and Jeremiah lived in the 1850s. He lives in Chicago, where he manages all of our family wealth at Smith Barney. It's not a full-time job. And if you ever get to Chicago, as we did recently, John will give you a fine tour of the city. He will retrace where our ancestors' neighborhood was, in the Bridgeport section, where not only the Lyonses began, but that's also the neighborhood that spawned many Chicago mayors and Al Capone. John will also take you to the finest neighborhood restaurants, and he might slip in some free investment advice. In addition to his own remarks, I asked John to read a passage about the rites of passage, which many of us have experienced leaving home for the first time to go to college. And I think it's fair to say there was something about the first Lyonses, for all of us, they were hooked on education. So the year is 1900, when 17-year-old Thomas Lyons, the son of Richard and Sarah, with the strong encouragement of his mother Sarah, got on a cattle train in South Dakota headed for Chicago under the care and watchful eyes of cattlemen friends of his father and of his Uncle Will, John.
Thank you. It is true I have moved back to Chicago, and interestingly enough, the area of Bridgeport is still a vibrant neighborhood in Chicago, an Irish neighborhood to this day, and as Bob mentioned, a couple of our more infamous or famous mayors have come from there. The Daley name is still very much alive in Chicago now. Going to college. We reached Chicago on Monday morning at 8 o'clock, and that afternoon I entered Notre Dame, the most lonesome boy east of the Mississippi River. It was my first experience in a totally strange land, where the magic of my father's name had no skill. My rough Dakota suit did not attract unfavorable attention, but my high-heeled shoes, of which I was so proud, and my Boss Rowage cowboy hat, youth's model, called for derision and nicknames. But this was not the worst. The beautiful grounds of Notre Dame, with their trees and magnificent buildings, aroused no spark of admiration in me. I was looking for the dream country, where the sky met the earth. Father Houlihan, who finally encouraged me so that I got over my homesickness and was enabled to become a member of the student body, saw me standing one afternoon, grazing around trance-like. With his great tact and kindness, he managed to draw me into a conversation. Finally, he asked me just what seemed peculiar to me in the sights at which I was gazing. I finally told him about Dakota, where you could see the horizon for 6 miles in any direction, a perfect circle. And now a small poem. I love my prairies, they are mine, from zenith to horizon line, clipping the world of sky and sod, like the bended arm and wrist of God. I love their grasses, their skies are larger, and my restless eyes fasten on more of earth and air than seashore furnishes anywhere. I had not read Hamlin Garland's poem, but it expressed my feeling. Father Houlihan was very sympathetic, even to the point of inviting me to ride to the college farms with him. Once he pointed out a small meadow bordering on St. Joseph River, which went by the name of St. Joe Prairie. The humor of the great name applied to the few acres of meadow suddenly restored my equilibrium. I put my magnificent Stetson hat away in Ola's trunk, spent 35 cents for a college cap, and began the process of becoming acclimated as a student of Notre Dame. I was also asked to make a few comments, and believe it or not, there is some brevity in the Irish blood, of which I can do very quickly. There's obviously a lot of history represented here today by people present and memories that have been expressed here today. But there's also a lot of future here, as is evident by a few of the voices that we hear chirping up every once in a while. It is our responsibility now, hopefully, to make a history that will be as proud and as interesting as the things we have heard about today. And I'd also like to say that Bob's passion here for all that has been put together has turned really into a great pleasure for all of us, and I think we should owe him a great round of applause.
Well, I can't resist pulling this for it. My wife knew that I especially enjoyed the meadowlark, and my family does. Tom did, my mother did. So she got me a nice photograph of a meadowlark. And in one of Tom's essays, he concludes by saying, Dakota Territory had rich memories for a child. The marvelous grass of summer, the great mirage, the northern lights, the swirling snows of winter, and the sweet song of the meadowlark. And if those of you who are here get up bright and early tomorrow morning, Noni and I and my two brothers will meet you out at Gavin's Point Dam, but you have to get there before 7 to hear the meadowlark. But you shall hear its song. I didn't realize that this might happen, but so appropriately, right before we gathered here, Mark Price gave me a letter from Tom's alma mater, the University of Notre Dame, where I also had the pleasure of going for 2 summers. And as you know or have guessed, Tom Lyons was a college graduate of Notre Dame. And Mark wrote a letter to Notre Dame, sending the book to Father Theodore Hesburgh, the former president of Notre Dame. And I would like to read you the brief letter that was sent back to Mark. Dear Mr. Peisch, this is dated July 22nd, 1991. Thank you for your letter and the wonderful bit of history regarding your Uncle Tom entering Notre Dame. I am sending it to our archives. I am sure they will be happy to share anything they have on Father Houlihan, mentioned in John's reading. He was far before my time, so I know nothing about him. With best wishes, ever devotedly in Notre Dame, Father Theodore Hesburgh. Nice little scratch.